the stage. So, you guys are here to hear about Dragons and Profit. Alright, so we're here to talk about the content of EverQuest Next, and we have some great guests here with us today that don't sit on all of our other panels, because you know most of us already by now. But we have a few of the guys from Storybricks here with us, so you guys can ask them questions. From this side of the table to the far side, pretty much in level of importance. So on this side we have Brian Schwab, who, and I'm gonna get this wrong, but you're the Chief Technical Officer at Storybricks. Is that your title? All right. And then Stefan, and I'm going to butcher his last name. Gavin? Close? No. Say your own name. So he's not from around here. And Stefan, what's your title is?
I'm the designer at Storybricks. He's from Texas.
He's from Texas. We have Steve Denuser, our lead content designer for EverQuest Next. He loves the applause. And Derek McPherson, our lead designer of both EverQuest Next and Live Content. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Okay, cool. So thanks everybody for coming. This is the AI demo as I was talking about in the keynote and stuff. So let's get going. So EQ Next isn't disabled, kind of in other MMOs. The NPCs are completely static. So regardless of the peril they claim their village is in, or what nasty foes are threatening to destroy all life in the universe, the things you do don't really change anything. You're on this treadmill. And you know the exact same story waiting for the next player comes along, right? And in those cases where something interesting is going on, it usually happens because some designers have made extensive use of some complicated scripting to simulate behavior. In EQ Next, you won't walk into a new area and see groups of NPCs standing around with exclamation points over their heads. Instead, you're going to be guided to areas where events are happening. You'll see NPCs and other players engaged in activities like building, fighting, gathering, whatever. And you can jump in and move the story forward, or push it in other directions to see what happens. And there's tons of stories happening all the time, all over the world. So what you'll experience on a moment-by-moment basis in EQ Next is fundamentally tied to the pillars that Dave talked about in his keynote speech. The most important of which is the like and consequence. The things you do in the game matter in tangible ways. But everything starts with NPCs and their interactions in the world.
Okay, so we're going to show you something. You've seen the Citadel in the keynote, and it's a very cool place, but you didn't see NPCs in the Citadel. NPCs in EverQuest Next are a bit different because, as you can see, I hope it's working. Suspense is key. What you wanted to show was the last screen. You succeeded. All right, let's do it again. Something else. Okay.
Sorry for the technical problems.
Sorry.
Please don't do
Let's run from.
Can you just play it separately?
All right, let's do this. So, this is a Citadel, and you see people moving around. The difference in EverQuest Next is that NPCs have their own lives. They have behaviors based on who they are, and their races, their role, and their own goals. Here you can see that there are several types of NPCs in the Citadel, and is, they just capture a nature spirit, and she's draining the life essence of the necrosauria, and she's putting it in the shadow pit, and the shadow pit is used to power dark arts magic. Here is with the scout. The scout, you can see it as a guard, but actually he knows the places around you, and he can use teleporters to find vantage points. Warriors can use the shadow essence that has been collected to power the forges and can use very powerful weapons. If you drop new characters in the scene, the other characters, for instance, here is a priestess that is wearing the
Queen's robe.
The Queen's robe, and everybody understands who she is, and according to her.
Yeah, so this is not scripted behavior. There's NPC, we could have put a crown on an NPC's head, and that's the crown of the king, which is symbolic and it makes a difference. And suddenly all the NPCs around them react to that. You could have in the middle of a tent, you can have a scary necromancer right through, and everyone is scared and flees. Not because we scripted it, just because of what that character, that NPC necromancer, represents.
Yeah.
And what he does, what his influence is.
So we're dropping things in the world that are radiating influences that NPCs pick up on.
For instance, we saw the scout. They're actually in the area, but there is no patrol path. They will react to where the teleporters are, where the vantage points are, and they will adapt.
Okay, so in this game world in which the NPCs have drives that move them around through the world, how are you guys, the players, going to find these quest givers and be guided to the content? Can I answer that question? Unfortunately, we do. So you're getting away with content in EQN. Actually, you're copy of the Magic Tome Rosong, which was also shown in the we talked about last year too. So Rosong is your atlas, it's your bestiary, it's your lore repository. It's a living record of your travels to where you next. So Rosong guides you towards new places to explore, reveals conflicts in the world that you can take part in, conflicts in which you get to make meaningful choices and push the action of those events. So as you play, Rosong remembers the deeds you do, the things you do, the choices you make. Rosong remembers, and it serves as a constant companion on your journeys. So it weaves together the story of your character's actions in the world. This is your story.
Okay, so we've shown you how individual NPCs behave, but this is also true. The same system powers the groups of NPCs. Groups also have needs and drives and goals. We're not just talking about a tribe of orc invading a village, and this is scary. Although it is a valid example, a good example. We mean things like villagers reacting to their farmlands becoming barren. Because people act differently where they're starving. Or we're talking about what happens when an ancient temple is discovered and the power of a forgotten god begins influencing the people around. These changes in turn create opportunities for players' interaction. NPCs will not act alone, they will need your help to act. And sometimes you will also need to interfere with their plans. Because what happens is that when groups of NPCs have goals, these goals trickle down to the members of these groups, and you have to interact with actual NPCs. And all this establishes patterns of behavior that you can learn, and you know that the stories make sense in the world.
So story is the backbone of everything we do on Next. And the unique way that EQN delivers story is by projecting narrative through the world, the events of the world. So we take the races, the kingdoms, the organizations, and even individual NPCs that we've written into the lore, and we create behaviors and desires based on those stories. So what is the Ashen want? What do the Knights of Truth care about? What are the Renii goblins after? By dropping NPCs with opposing drives in a location with resources in the world that we care about, we have endless opportunities for conflict. So players come into the equation and react to those NPC desires. And it'll be players who push these stories into the directions that they choose. So let's look at an example of how this works in game. Okay, so this is something. It may be a map. So this is a map of the main continent as it appears at the start of the game. So we have Antarctica to the west and Emerald to the east, and these were broken apart by the devastation of the ashfall. And we'd like to draw your attention to one particular location. The red highlight shows an area where the Serpent Spine Mountains meet Pythicore Forest. So these names are obviously familiar to you folks. And as we called out in the keynote, though, EQN is a reimagining of the story. So the lore of Pythicore is slightly different. I'll give you a quick run through the storyline. So way back thousands of years before the start of the game, Pythicore was a site of battle. This huge battle between the Seraphs, who are the gods of EQN, and the Ravens, which are these horrible monsters born out of pure chaos magic. And a lot of Seraphs died in this war. And among them was Tenare, goddess of nature. So her blood flows out and mingles with the chaos magic and seeps into the earth itself, which causes all these nasty, corrupt magic to permeate Pythicore. So sometime later, the Seraph Elise, who assumed Tenare's role as protector of nature, puts pockets of powerful dryads around the forest so that their nature magic could hold these people at bay. And that works for a long time until events change.
So we wanted to show you something, how the system tells the story. We've been talking about how AI drives the story of request text, and for the first time here we can do the math of how it works. We're going to show you the tool we use to simulate dynamic story generating systems we use. The tool roughly simulates how players make choices when dealing with NPC groups. What you must be aware of is that this is a very abstract design tool, something that we use and that you will never see in the game. And it works at a much faster pace because it's a simulation of what you will actually play through and experience. Also, well, we say it's an exclusive demo because it's probably the last time we will ever show this anywhere. But we feel that because you care about the company, it's the right place to show.
Okay, so we're going to talk through the story in a series of 4 scenarios. So in this first scenario, we have a band of kobolds who's moving into the mountains. And so what this map on screen represents is the area where Pythicore meets Serpent Spine. So that the grayish parts to the left of the image are Serpent Spine, and the bigger area on the right, which is grayed out right now, is Pythicore.
So on this map, which you see divided into different regions, there is a red part, and this is where the kobolds have established a foothold on Serpent Spine. The color indicates that the kobolds have influence over one of the regions. And this means that when a player explores this place, or when they go through it, they have a chance of encountering kobolds and interact with them, which probably means fighting them or being ambushed by them. As we just explained, the groups have their own roles and traits which affect their behaviors. And in this case, kobolds are motivated by greed, which means that they seek to secure control of wealthy regions. Here is represented by diamonds, and they want to plunder their regions. So let's try to see if we can make this work. Okay, so I'm going to run one step of the simulation, and you see that the kobolds are already taking control of a new region, and we can see that they are establishing a new base camp, and the dominance in their region has increased. And we see that what their goal is to increase their wealth. And if we continue running the simulation, we can see that they act autonomously, they conquer a region with wealth, and they start plundering it, and so on, and so forth. What is interesting is that they react autonomously, and if we check the world, for instance, let's pick a territory, at some point. Like we've discovered a new gold mine. They will immediately try to plunder it. This means that, for instance, if there is a caravan, a train that goes through the territory, they will attack it because the caravan is a source of wealth. All right. So we've seen how characters, NPCs,
It happens completely without our intervention.
yes,
These NPCs are set up, they have their desires, their wants, their organizations are set up, and they have the things that they want and they need, and they will go and get them. So we just let the thing run, and then you guys, every time you log in, the world has changed, something's different. NPCs have conquered a new area, or been conquered in a new area, and that sort of thing continues to change. So the world is not the same place as you log in one week and you log in the next. Completely different. And this is one of the big changes from the static world that you're used to this new, much more dynamic world.
So if there are more players online conquering a certain area that the NPCs used to have, and then we take control of that, when we come into the game, we'll see that our side, so to speak, has control.
We'll talk about that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So that's exactly the idea is that, okay, we've shown you what happens when kobolds are left on the road. And if there were no players, well, there will be kobolds and orcs everywhere. But what happens when the players get involved? What we want to do in the request next is to put players' activities and gameplay at the heart of the story of the test. NPC groups have needs, and most of them require the assistance of the players to satisfy those needs. The NPC groups can only change the world through the actions of the player. So when an NPC initial goals are satisfied, it creates new needs, which in turn opens new quests, and it's a loop of content that is always generated.
Yeah, when we're setting up these factions, these organizations, we're essentially creating a hierarchy of needs for them. So there's things that drive them first and foremost. When those things aren't met, then they move on to a different desire. So NPCs can react to the changes that you're doing and shift to a different behavior based on needing some goals. Yeah, so in the second scenario, so the Dark Elves are coming in, they're building up resources because they come back into the world and they want to establish their own community. And so they're advancing on circuits and mountains. So their goal is to build a powerful stronghold from which they can seize control of this region and then ultimately expand their influence in the Mythic because they can sense that there's magic permeating there and the Dark Elves want that magic.
However, when they arrive, the Dark Elves are not yet powerful enough to deal with the kobold infestation. They need the players' help. So their first goal is to secure their stronghold, to increase the defenses. The players can contribute to this by helping the Dark Elves expand their influence and territory to reach to territories rich with resources and you can put that, like iron or hard stones with which you then forge weapons or build fortifications.
Iron is French for iron.
Iron.
So, Stefan, what happens if the players don't help them?
Well, the elves suffer the consequences of this because we don't control this. We offer content to the players. If the players don't help the elves will be in trouble. We've seen in the kingdom the attack of the citadel. This is a good example. So let's have a look at what it means. So the first need that the elves are is to strengthen their settlement, and they reach a source of resources that can help them, but with the help of the players, clear the way, and they consume it, and then we can start conquering with the help of the players again, which means that the elves then will ask the players to help them clear the path toward new resources and gain control over new territories. Get rid of the commons. And when they've done that, they can start doing just what Steve was talking about, which is increasing the magical power. You've seen the shadow pit that was in the video, and that's what they're building now. They have the players who wear materials.
So we've said that this is an abstract tool, and we realize it kind of looks like a risk board or something like that. So you have to kind of imagine yourself. Obviously, when you guys get these tools and things, they're going to be in 3D, and you're dropping things in the world and stuff. So you can kind of imagine each one of those sections of the map being like an area within a zone. And there might be some point of interest that's there, maybe it's some mine shaft or a lost temple or whatever it is. And so you can picture one of those areas being one place where one event is happening. Now, those are dotted all over this place, and there's all kinds of points of interest within the zone, as you know. And there's stuff going on scattered around in all those locations based on the story bricks that we put around that are radiating out these influences and NPCs that are reacting to them.
What's interesting about that last slide is that gray area is the kid before. There's content all there that's very light. It does not echo or lend to this story at all. You have to help darken in order to advance that story. And if you don't, as Stefan said earlier, that won't be. It's not a cruise control. It won't just happen. Players choose not to participate, and you'll never experience those storylines that we're talking about.
Yeah, so imagine yourself, wandering the world and finding these little pockets, and I wonder what's going on here. And you start interacting with things, and it starts pushing the stories forward. So we're going to go into the third scenario. So here, as we saw in the simulation, the Dark Elves have taken over Serpent's Mine, and they built their stronghold, and they constructed in there what they call a shadow, which is radiating shadow energy, and they want to feed that. So now their objective has changed. So they want to move into Mythicor, which has all those dryads in it that were placed there long ago, and they want to take the nature essence of the dryads and convert it into shadow power, which is what they learned to use during their exile on Rome.
So this scenario is an example of how conflicts can arise between NPC groups with opposing dryads. Because on one hand, the dryads want to preserve the nature power, and on the other hand, the Dark Elves want to take the nature and convert it to shadow. So now each player in the region has a choice. Can work on the behalf of the Dark Elves, killing dryads and seeing places of nature and power, or can work on the behalf of the dryads, attacking Dark Elves raiding parties, or infiltrating their camps, or sabotaging their resources. And we don't weigh these choices. These are your choices. Let's have a look at what it is. So again, this is a simulation. So what happens is that we see the Dark Elves building their shadow essence and spread shadow into Mythicor. When the Dark Elves do that, they have higher power, higher fighting power in this region, and so they can conquer it. But the dryads and the allies of the dryads can fight back. And let's run the simulation and see what happens. You see that there is a back and forth struggle, and it simulates how players can take sides. Okay, maybe we should look at one of the possible outcomes of this. But first, that's how it works.
So as players you're choosing opposing sides. So you can imagine how situations like this could lead to optional PvP scenarios open up, for example. So again, these wouldn't just be random PvP fights that happen in the area. This is something you could opt into. But these would be battles that you would care about because they too are affecting the story of the world. And if you don't want to participate in PvP, that's fine. You can undertake missions on behalf of NPC groups and indirectly interfere with what players on the other side are doing. So by choosing sides in conflict, you're earning standing with NPC groups, which can in turn lead to new content opening up to you. So for example, if you gain faction standing with one of these groups, that might allow you to purchase prestige items or even unlock new classes. So again, there's classes all over the world that you're going around and collecting, as you mentioned in the last professor. And so Rosan remembers the actions that you've taken organizations that you've chosen to become allies with. And then Rosong, in turn, will suggest places for you to go with events that are of particular interest to your faction standing or the way that you've been playing.
So we've been showing basically what happens on the server, the stuff that we usually don't see. And we will go into something that you are a little bit more familiar with now, which is random.
Yeah. So in this outcome of the previous scenario, if the Dark Elves were able to take control over half of the Dryads' territory, the Dryads' power then to hold the darkness back becomes so weakened that they can no longer hold back the dark spirits that work within the living room. So this scenario is an example of how player actions, by playing through the procedural content in an area, might trigger a rallying call, which are those gigantic world-changing events. And so in this case, the Dark Elves have triggered the Bloody Mythical rallying call, which can bring players from all over the server here to fight back against that ancient darkness that's moving through. So it's an event that will leave Mythical permanently changed, and it, depending on how it turns out, it has the potential for those undead spirits to start bleeding into other nearby territories as well. So this is just a graph kind of showing the dynamics at a really high level of the Bloody Mythical rallying call. So in the upper left, we have these spirits that have been contained for a long time, and when nature gets depleted to the point where it can't hold it back anymore, then shadows start dominating the land. So this happened because players chose to help the Dark Elves. So, surprise, the actions that you have consequences, and sometimes it can lead to whole new things that you didn't see coming that open up. So your actions always have consequences. So the Dark Elves were after this shadow power, right? They're taking the nature essence and converting it into shadow. But what they didn't realize was that the undead spirits feed off that shadow magic too, and they could essentially exploit the rise of the Dark Elves' influence in this land. So these ancient spirits that have awakened seek to then to rise up and start consuming the nature essence that's left around the Dryads, because by
and inside of islands and landmarks, it's all about how our islands are put together and how we're using them and what we're going to do with them in the future. So we have a few people up here on stage that can talk about the different parts of it. We have Rosie Rappaport, I can't actually say her name, and she's our senior art director on the team for both Everyplace Next and Landmark. We have Darren McPherson, who is our lead designer for Everyplace Next and Landmark. And then we have Steve Blue, who's the technical director for both Everyplace Next and Landmark. They can talk about all the goodness that is here.
All right. So this is in this, as Terry said, we're going to talk about some of the upcoming things for Islands. I don't know. I know we've announced a number of things that are coming, but this should be pretty exciting for those who are playing Landmark. Has a lot of things that are going to change. So let's move forward with that. So our islands right now are where you actually play the game. There are multiple servers, and each one of those has 50 islands on it. Each one of those is quite expansive. One of the things that we really want to do in Landmark was embrace this open world building. And one of our other major tenets was exploration. We've always been committed to having this fully 3D world. And by fully 3D, we mean that you're not just playing on a set, as you do in most games, but there's actually depth under the world. If you dig in, you'll find other stuff down there. So we are moving forward with our goals. So the largest change that's upcoming soon is going to be layers. So right now we have a single layer with the first layer of caverns, but we're going to have 5 layers between each island. Each one of these layers will have its own biome map. So you guys are aware of what biomes are. Some of the islands you call home might be a mixture of arid deserts and tundra, for instance, or jungle and forest, old-growth forest. And each one of the layers will have its own underground biome with specific underground environments, like underground desert, underground jungle, underground forest. And most of these are analogous to the surface biomes, although not all of them are. You've seen right now the crystal caverns. Eventually there'll be a volcanic underground biome, and you'll find more and more of these things as we continue to push forward. So, the underground biome that is there is independent of what is on the surface, which is pretty cool. So you can be in a desert, you can be in a shallow desert cave, and you can dig down a little bit, and suddenly you're in an underground jungle. And so it doesn't matter, as you see in this graphic, it doesn't matter what's above it. It can be completely, what is below it is completely independent. So the biome map, I mentioned the biome map, that's going to be something that you, the community, have to explore and find out, determine which island, whether you be on Bluff or any of the other specific island names, you'll have to figure out what those are. Those are unique per island, but each individual island per server has the same biome. So if you guys, as a community, map out Bluff, for instance, you'll know exactly what Bluff is on all the other servers. So you as a grand community can figure this out. And that will matter. Why does it matter? Well, because
Go back.
You're just not forwarding the last level.
yes, exactly. So this stuff will change. You'll want to know where these biomes are because the things that you want and need will be pushed underground. So not everything will be, but right now each one of our islands all of our islands are divided into tier 1 to 5. And you can be on a tier 1 island and you'll find predominantly tier 1 resources. You can go to another island and find those. In the future, all islands will have tier 1 on the surface, and there will be no notion of a tiered island anymore. So, if you're playing on a specific tier 5, tier 4 island right now, that will not be the case. That island will lose that little label, the little parentheses label at the end of that, and it'll just be that name. And if you want tier 5 or tier 4 materials, where do you think you have to go? Down. Okay. So you're going to want to know this because we are going to be extending our. Right now, we do a little bit of this. If you need specific plants, for instance, or you need specific trees, you have to go to the biome that houses those. And we're going to be expanding that to metals and to stone and different things. So if you want, for example, to find obsidian, well, you've got to find a tier 4, tier 5 underground desert. And knowing what that biome is and what islands have those biomes and those specific tiers is going to matter to you. So as a community, we really hope we'll band together and find out what those are, because it's really going to matter to you. So I'm clearly not pushing through these very well. So I just I get so excited talking that I don't walk through these. So I've come up with all sorts of cool animations for this. So I should probably click through them. So the next big expansion is caves. And so you've already got our first layer of caverns, and each one of those caverns has a number of items in it that you can find. You can find plants, you can find treasure chests. Our plan is to expand that with many, many, many more treasure chests with a lot more items. Some of the things that you'll be hearing today about the combat of Landmark, I think that's today at 6 o'clock, maybe a little later. But we're gonna have to distribute lots and lots of items to you in Landmark, and these underground chests and the NPCs that you're going to find underground, monsters, are going to be the source for a lot of those things. So really, you're going to have to go and explore. If you don't want to explore, you're going to have to trade something for those items. So we also want to expand the notion of what our caverns are. Right now, our caverns are small, but we're taking lots of steps to make those larger, having some large sets of caverns that allow you to have much bigger things in them, like including structures, so that you can walk down and you can find something that, as in this little image here, there's a structure underneath that you can explore that has NPCs in it, monsters or treasure in it, and we really want this to be a fun experience for you to come and explore. So we also really have a desire to retain the exploration throughout the years that Landmark will be around. And one of the ways that we do that is this notion of our goal is evergreen content. And so we need to make sure that, if you've been playing Landmark for 5 years, there's still stuff for you to explore. And one of the ways that we do this and that we retain freshness in the world is through shuffling. So underground, in those tiers, those cavern layouts will shuffle periodically. Now, how often that happens is something that we're still debating, but we really want you to be able to log in every night and have new places to discover new things, to find new ruins, to find new treasure chests, and other things to find. We don't want that to be the same static experience it is in those other games. Exploration, we want to be profound. We want that to mean something to you. And we really want you to be able to explore to your heart's content. And the specific caverns pertain to the biomes will not. So on your particular island, Tier 5 will always retain its biome map, although just the caverns and the content will change for you. So the world is about to get much, much larger, and we really wanted you to, with the notion that you're going to be having to go to Tier 5, find things. How fun is it to take your pick and dig down, even to the first layer of caverns right now? I like it. Okay, so with longer, it's not awesome, and we're doing things to make that more entertaining. Through the use of pulverizers, it becomes more tolerable, but we really want to allow you to expand that experience. And so what we're going to be doing is adding travel. So right now, each island has a portal spire, a big spire in the middle of the island, typically in the middle of the island. And we're going to be adding portal crystals around the entire area. So these form a ley line network. You can use this network to travel around the world. It will cost you to do this. And this will allow you to explore not only the surface, but underground, because these portal crystals will be underground as well. So we really, really want you to be able to explore, but we don't want it to take an inordinate amount of time to get down to the places that you need to go. The fun of going to Tier 5 should be that you can spend time in Tier 5, not having to spend your whole evening trying to get down to Tier 5. which it definitely would. So we have so there's not a lot for me to say aside from we think it's going to be really fun as we expand these islands and we make these tiers bigger, more meaningful places to you, and we think you'll really enjoy it. So I'll pass it off to Rosie, who's going to talk about how we make this crazy stuff.
That's right. So I'm just going to run through the art production. Our goal when we were trying to figure out how we were going to do this is we have to be able to generate islands quickly as needed, but we don't want them to have that bland look that they can get when they're procedurally put together. So our goal was to make them look handcrafted. The way that we achieved it, the steps of the production are we concept it so we know exactly what our goals are for the look and feel. And then we create all of the materials and props by hand. And then we put them together in compositions so that we don't, I mean, one of the problems I think with procedural generation is that it's just placing things randomly. So we can actually compose artistically the way that these copses of trees are being grown together, and that makes them look much more natural and handcrafted. And then we use procedural, we procedurally assemble them to put them all together.
I can speak a little bit about that procedural part of it. It's actually quite an interesting problem, and so those of you who probably noticed, like the various bugs that we've had with it, still have a few issues with like the wall of trees. It's a very complicated algorithm that gets made when we procedurally generate positions for all these plants and trees on an island. We have to run through every single place they can go, check to see will it fit there, is it following the rules that the artist has laid out, and then it generates these nodes that say there's a possibility that this thing can spawn here because we don't want it to always be in the same place. So it generates millions of these nodes that get loaded on the servers, so when the server comes up, it can randomly populate all those things. And then we went and put it in the caves, and everything got a lot worse. But now you may have a group of, underground flora or whatever that needs to be in a certain pattern in one of these groups that they specified. Well, what if it doesn't fit? What if one of the pieces of that group doesn't fit? Or, a certain orientation on a wall doesn't fit because it protruded into another wall. So there's actually a lot of computation that goes into this. And those of you that were at the previous panel this morning, we actually have to use some distributed network rules to make that run fast enough so it doesn't take days for us to generate this information. It's actually quite complicated.
A lot of problem solving. So I'm going to run a little bit through the steps that we go through. The first step is the biome concept. We get the terrain contour, the look and feel concept, and then the individual props. Okay, so the terrain contour is just, it's done by the concept artist, but it shows from the ocean to the high mountains what the objective is visually. And here's another example. So you can see that the biome includes everything from the ocean to the mountains, so that all has to be figured out beforehand so that the tech artists have this goal to work towards. And then they also work on these look and feel pieces, and the look and feel pieces include everything that we're going to do. They include the flora, the lighting, the props, especially the trees and the rocks, and the way that the materials are going to look on the ground and be distributed on the ground. So there's the tundra area. You can see that some of those, that wasn't exactly the look that we went for the train, because that wasn't quite achievable yet. And this was an idea for one of the underground caverns. Lighting is really, really important. And when I talk about lighting here, I'm talking about the environment lighting, so the sunlight. But when we use the term lighting, that includes the fog, all of the time of day shifts, and many, many, many factors that go into lighting to do with the exposure and the brightness of the sun. And there's many, many different variables that go together to create the lighting. So it's extremely important to pre-plan. And that way, it's much faster to create this concept art than it is to actually go in there and start working with the variables and the tools. So if they have something to look at and to achieve, it makes the process much faster. Another thing that we look very heavily at is silhouette, because the silhouettes are what you take in first. The the overall look, and it's a very broad place to start for a lot of these shapes, especially the trees. It's really, really important to look at that. And we just do that with black and white a lot of times because it's so fast, and it makes the artist focus especially on the silhouette. It sort of restricts them, but it forces them to look at that, and then we can all look at it and decide if that's the correct goal that we want to go for. And then they also, after the look and feel pieces and the silhouette pieces are done, the concept artist can start digging in and concepting the individual props that the modelers are then going to make. And there's another example. Now, oftentimes the modelers can do their own concept art, so there's a lot of crossover there. So then moving on to the 3D modelers. The 3D modelers also make materials. So they make the materials and they look at them on lots of different shapes, and they have to look at them in the game and make sure that they go across the terrain properly, that they look really good in different lighting conditions. And they do this with all of the different ores and terrain materials and check the blending. And then with the architectural materials, it's also important that they build with those materials so that they can make sure that they're aligning properly and that they're good to build with. And then according to that concept art, they start building out the different props. And the trees are, we call them props, even though they're enormous. And oftentimes they're made modularly in Maya so that they can be recombined to make other props quickly when that's necessary. So you can see here that these trees are individual pieces, and then they're combined with those roots. And then everything is starting to be tested in scenes, because that's vitally important for the environment artists to remember. We're making scenes. We don't have prop artists, material artists. Everybody is working towards scenes, and that's our ultimate goal. And then, as I was talking about, they do the prop placement. They're composing these plants together in clusters, and not just plants, but how the rocks appear surrounding the plants, so that they can get a more natural look and feel to the way that they go together.
Something that's really interesting about prop placement, getting back a little bit, is that in the engineering department, you had to kind of satisfy two different sets of requirements. You had the artists who really wanted to be this very aesthetic placement of the trees and the rocks and shrubs, but then at the same time, the designers telling us, well, but that tree can only show up, 12% of the time. You can only have, there must be a minimum of 4 of them in the island at the same time, and a maximum of this many. So it made it actually very interesting to try and solve both sets of problems at the same time. We're pretty neat bunch.
Yeah, correct.
It was fun.
And then you can see here a scene that's been put together to be tested with all of the props and the materials on the ground, and starting to look at the lighting. Now the lighting, as I was saying, has to be set up for all the different times of day. And what we found was best was to work on key times of day. So we work on noon, sunset, sunrise, and nighttime. And then it blends in between the two, or in between.
You do seasons?
Well, not currently, but we were showing previously the deciduous forest. We don't have dynamic seasons yet. And then what we do is we have these, we call them maps, and they are grayscale maps that determine the placement of they determine everything, the shape, the contour of the terrain, the placement of the materials, and anything you can think of. These different maps can be combined, and that's what's really nice about them, is they can be combined in different ways and with different values to create an infinite number of shapes. So we're going to show a video here.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the trick. That's the trick.
Oh, there we go. It showed for a minute. Okay, there we go. So this is showing the introduction of the various maps and how they're affecting the contour of the terrain and the detail of the terrain and the shape of the island. And then we look a little bit about how they can, these values and different maps can be interchanged to get so much variety that we need. Yeah, during the
You would take a lot of falling damage. Don't talk to me about the thoughts on this.
Can we have one?
Even if this is a simulation.
Sure.
Just watch it and then pause, run around.
Frame rate might be a little low.
Get totally trashed to watch that for an hour. Oh yeah.
Yes, and now we have.
All right,
Q&A.
and so now it's time.
You guys hear me? Yeah, there it is. So now it's time for questions. So if you'd like to, just line up right over here, and we'll take the questions one at a time. I don't think you're going to be first this time. You were a little slower. Well, it was very nice of you. So, come on up.
So currently, most of the islands are very, very mountainous. Are we having plans for more flatlands, maybe savannas or meadows or areas?
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely want to be adding more biomes, and the terrain should be appropriate for whatever those biomes are.
What is the main reason for your asking that? Just out of my curiosity.
I like to build on mountaintops, so I do a lot of building on mountaintops, but sometimes the things I build require a little bit more flat space.
Well,
And I don't like chopping off the top of the mountain. I like to build with the terrain that's around me.
I was going to say, if there were better chopping off tools, maybe.
No, I'm fine technically doing it. I just don't like destroying the landscape to build what I want to build.
Fair enough. Like a German building.
Thank you.
Very harmonious.
Yes.
Yes, there's a lot of us.
Hi there, folks. I was wondering about, you talked a little bit about rooms and stuff underground. I was wondering if those points of interest are going to be something that players are actually going to be able to help the team build up and generate parts of it that the team will then be able to utilize and kind of procedurally insert in the reshuffle games, every time there's reshuffle.
That is the plan, yes.
I was waiting for the that's a great idea.
We already had it. No, it's we definitely want to integrate your stuff into the game so you go, oh, there's my road, how cool is that? Now, because of reshuffling, you may not see that very often.
Might get some issues with the whole dungeon mastering tools as well.
And I can easily see there being competitions and things like that for that very sort of game. So, question.
I was wondering also if there's going to be a little bit more kind of width between the biomes. Right now, there's a lot of kind of a sharp transition from one biome to another. I was wondering what the plan is going forward for making that a little bit more gradual.
So there's a couple issues there. I mean, we can only make it transition. What is your main goal in wanting to transition more slowly?
It's a classic.
For the most part, it's that it gives it more a sense of a living and breathing world. When I see one biome butted right up on another.
Sometimes when there's a sharp transition like that, it's probably just a bug. Because we did try to actually have space where it transitions. The other thing that we can do is actually add intermediate biomes in between, where you actually have a distinct biome that is a strip between the two of them, but that's a little bit, it takes a little more time to put that together.
Absolutely. I mean,
Possible.
it's almost another biome of its own at that point, having something that's kind of in between the two.
Great questions.
This question is you said that we have a shift those weapons and three options for underground rooms.
That's a good question. Underground claims. So we have some competing goals there because we really want to have underground claims. We also want to preserve underground space for exploration. So we hope to meet somewhere in the middle and have some limited amount of those claims, or have islands perhaps where you can claim underground. That obviously reshuffling will interfere with all of that stuff. So it's something we're still talking about.
So presumably we need deep underground. Because you can do underground right now.
Underground.
where he was inflating something already underground.
But then nobody will see what you got. That's what happens
Unless they
with
go look.
Yeah, it might be kind of hard.
Exploring.
Yeah. So three-dimensional game. Thank you.
Okay, so you've often said that landmark is not tied to any specific genre. It's not science fiction or fantasy or whatever. But you also mentioned that, for example, there will be underground temples or buildings or structures or what have you.
Underground silos.
Yeah, will we see like an alien lair in Tier 3 or an underground station?
This goes back to what the previous question was, which is, if you build that and we can use it, then yes, there will be.
And we will be introducing more materials that are more appropriate for sci-fi, so people will be able to build it other.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for us to do things like that.
Will that include monsters too?
That's a good question. Yeah, we would like to be as agnostic to genre as we can, including everything. You've seen some of the wearables that we had at the panel. I guess during the keynote, Dave showed some of the wearables that are definitely sci-fi. Today, in the items of the Combat and Landmark, you're going to see a lot more of those. You get a cool glimpse of what some of the wearables could be. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
When we have caves that went all the way down, will we have the option to walk all the way down? Currently, you have caves about one level down. You have to try and move your way to the next set of caves. It's fine and all, but that takes a long time. I want to be able to explore my way down through the caves. Is there?
Yeah, there's some technical limitations. I don't know if Steve wants to talk to that.
Well, I mean, there's technical limitations, but if it's a strong desire to have a continuous path all the way to the bottom, I mean, it's certainly possible. It's not something that was requested. So. I'll throw it back on you. It would be good. We would like that.
First, I'd like to apologize for my voice. Karaoke was pretty intense last night.
Nice dancing, by the way.
Thank you very much. My question is what are your plans on procedurally generating other geographic features? Maybe like generating a volcano, generating a plateau, generating a ravine or a valley, something like that.
We can build those right now. They're not necessarily built procedurally, but hand built. That's our department's decision to make and our design to be to them. It's possible to do it though.
And the technology is, we're always working on this, so there's always an opportunity for us to create other features like that. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort from either the engineers or the artists to build those kinds of things in procedural code. And then they can start showing.
Just do it.
That's, by the way, on the development team, that's one of our favorite words is just. So that's just a little bit of art. That's just a little bit of code. Just code.
So earlier you mentioned that the terrain maps are going to be the same. So like when you're shifting the caverns, if you're on an island that's always got lava into tier 5, it'll always have lava in tier 5. Does that hold true like when we're going from closed beta to open beta and from open beta to release? That if you're on an island and it has tier 5 lava, that island will always have that there?
If we, assuming we don't redo those continents for one reason or another, there are reasons why we would do that because we're going to be adding new biomes. And as we add new biomes, we want them to be evenly distributed. So that even distribution may require us to do new biome mappings for both the surface and the vegetation.
I was just wondering because when you have a community working together to try to figure out where everything is, if everything vanishes or moves around, then it takes away from it.
Yeah, once we'll make sure you guys know once things are set in place, and then they will change for that, because we would enhance what we're talking about.
And then another quick question is, we saw pictures of forest trees. Can we get those?
You mean the deciduous forest?
Yeah.
When we release the deciduous forest, you will.
They are cool.
They are cool.
When you go cave exploring really deep at the bottom, and then you are digging with a pulverizer really deep, and I notice you try to press escape to safety, you're going to be out of the cave on top of the. Is there any way, like, I want to be where I started, you know, instead of just
Rather than
beginning
all-
of the top, I went all the way.
Do you mean like after you log out and come back into the game? Is that what you're talking about?
No,
or-
no, no. When you're digging at the bottom with the pulverizing things, you know, and you can't get up, but you, I don't want to get out.
Yes.
So it's if you dug a long way from a cave and then you hit escape, to use the evac to safety, it takes you to the top of the world, not to the next uppermost cave. Right. Is the question.
I mean, evac to safety is a preventative measure that we put in there because there are places that you can get stuck in, and not have the ability to get out.
The good grappling hook, you can get out just about everything.
Yeah, so you know, we put that in there like the first few days of alpha because players would get stuck in a chasm and not be able to get out. So ideally, that eventually goes away. Have other ways to fix that.
So I guess makes the bigger hole and you can use the grapple hook to go
Possibly, or
out.
you know, with the inclusion of ley lines in the world, travel between those layers into those destinations will be a lot easier for you to manage.
Okay. Well, another thing I just want to mention that you have a bug, like you're digging at the cave. All of a sudden, you kind of fall through and pop up on the top of the surface. So.
Yes, falling through the world is a tricky problem. We'll definitely.
We're constantly working on that. It's a bonus. Just
I'm learning from Playland. I am in the past $100 tab about when you guys announced it last December. I just got a question and statement if I could. Is because of streamers like Omi and the Omi team and your weekly Wednesday sessions and tutorials has really driven the hype for me to play in that market and getting involved. So what you guys are doing is working, so please keep it up. And I'm really excited about the game. My request, because I was talking to Fred last night, since Rose is here, I'd like to see a red texture to be added.
Oh, okay. I'll put it on the list that I've got for SOE 1.
I can only imagine you've had more than a few.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know that we need more materials, more building materials, and that is our goal, to make those in more colors as well, because we do have a brick, a smaller brick, but we'd like to make even smaller bricks of all different colors.
Okay, this one, there's a bug that when you mine or you pulverize, I like to call it a fluid to the surface bug. Yeah. With this being the first level of layers, I can get out my pulverize, quickly get back to where I was. But when we have 5 layers,
Yeah, we gotta fix that bit.
that's going to be a problem.
Yes.
And I got a rebuttal from the one person who wanted underground. I actually found a place where it was scalloped enough I could get my entire plane completely underground, and I discovered something. The one box outside your plane is totally 100% indestructible. You cannot get in your plane. Period.
That's a valid point. That's also a bug, but going back to our favorite word, Steve, can you just fix that bug? It's just some code.
Thank you.
Hi, so I know right now you guys are traveling between islands with Aspire. I was wondering if you plan on adding other options, like maybe having neighboring islands and sail over to the other island or something like that.
Well, it's something that gets more to the next step features. For Landmark, I don't expect it will. It's not in the plans to do that.
That doesn't mean we won't consider it a feature, but it's not definitely in the short-term plans.
And it also doesn't mean that you know, we can't make an island that was 2 landmasses separated by water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My question is, you were talking about the fact that the island's going to go into different tiers and every island's going to have it. Right now we can bounce from server to server, and I like to go into the gallery and I listed by the creators, and I write down, okay, I've been to this person's thing, and then I go to the next person. And sometimes they're on Courage, or they're on Serenity, or they're on another server. Are the servers going to be closed where we can't do that, or is it going to stay open?
No, it's always going to be open. We want you to be able to go and see everybody's stuff. I mean, that's what Landmark's about right now. You know, and it's going to continue to be that in the future. It's about seeing what other people are doing. So we will never lock down stuff on any one server.
Yeah, we're definitely not taking any functionality away with adding this layer.
So earlier you said that caves are going to shuffle after a while, but what happens if you log outside a cave and it shuffles?
Ooh, good question.
Well, you are mortal now, or well, just kidding.
So we talked about a number of solutions for that problem. You know, so you either just die. That's the easiest one, because that's just some code. Or we place you at the nearest hub location. The notion is that the nearest portal crystal. The notion is that the portal crystals don't change, even though things are shuffling around them. So those locales will always be distributed equally in each one of the layers. So you would go to the nearest area. So there's a number of solutions that we're talking about for that one thing. This will probably be an offline thing that we would do the shuffling, so we wouldn't have to deal with anybody online at the time that we did this. But if we weren't to do it offline, then we'd have to warn you. The earthquake is coming. The earthquake, so you better do that.
And like everything else that we're doing, when we actually get the multiple layers and the ability to shuffle the caves and everything, we'll put it out there to you guys, and we'll give you a first guess of what we can do, and then we'll work on it, we'll iterate on it, what you guys think is best. So, thank you.
Are you sisters, perhaps?
Hey, Dennis. That's better. Let's have different. I know on how there's 5 tiers that there's going to be, but already you have some tier 6 minerals. Where could those be?
In tier 5.
In tier 5.
So those would just be slightly harder to find than the tier 5 stuff. So, yeah, it's fine.
All right, thank you.
Could have made that much more mysterious.
You gotta say tier 5 with the spooky voice.
Yes.
Hi, so I was at the panel yesterday where they explained that PvP would be confined in the near future to flames only. But there is something much more organic and therefore very enjoyable about having a large area that you can both roam and explore and gather while you fight. How realistic is it to have the hope that we may see an entirely PvP-flagged island in the near future?
I mean, it's something that we can definitely talk about. And just because we said that, at least for the beginning, that PvP is going to be locked to given, to claims that people opt into it for, we've never said that about regular combat. Where monsters are going to be. We've always talked about the fact that caves and things like that are going to be dangerous because of monsters. So, without a doubt, there'll be combat down there, and we can talk about a PvP on it, but, it's a balance of what people want.
It's a little interesting also when you have an open server-based game. It's one thing in a game where it's got a separate rule set where you're logging specifically into that server, but you're bouncing around with people's claims. You didn't realize you went to a PvP server, and all of a sudden something comes up to that. So we just need to make sure that if we do something like that, we have to have the appropriate warnings in place. If you are going to a PvP island,
PvP at the end of it.
Hello. Glad to see you guys survive so far. I basically have 2 questions. The first one, the easy one, is back in the deep dark days in pre-alpha, we spoke about this and never heard anything else about maybe a space fire. Do you plan on doing a space fire? We could build a space station, but you couldn't do that with mountains on the side. It'd have to be flat.
So you're something more like a lunar file is what you're saying, or you're an asteroid or something like that.
Yeah, something that rocks floating around or whatever for the sci-fi people who like that sort of thing.
Super cool.
It's an interesting idea. We haven't really talked specifically about that, so we can go back and see what makes sense.
Yeah. That would be a specific
Right.
easier if you could put down a launcher or a flinger that cranks really high.
The other part is, will we have the ability in the future, would say build a dome and fill it with air and not swim through the air.
Yeah, that was something that I really wanted to get in for the second phase of water when we had to replace water. There's some rendering problems that we have right now, which is why we don't have it turned on. Because if you built a dome, you have that wonderful ocean animation we see we all love. It's totally beautiful. However, since it builds the mesh for the water around all the transition to different materials, what you have to have is a dome with an ocean mesh on the other side that would be bouncing in and out of the wall. With the way that we haven't figured out a solution to that problem yet. As soon as we get the time to do that, we will be able to. We actually have the code to be able to add water in, air under water, but we still have to solve that rendering problem. Just the code. Yeah.
Hi, I really love your props because I'm a lazy builder.
Props are awesome.
Props, yeah. I would like to see a softer tree, like a birch trees, more softer instead of those manly big ones.
As we add additional biomes, we'll definitely have more variety of plants as well.
You guys taking out those green shimmer from a cactus? You know, those little prop cactus as a plant? It used to kind of have a green shimmer illumination on it.
Oh.
It's gone now.
At the level.
Yeah.
We might have turned it down because we wanted the harvestable plants to stand out. I'm not sure if that's what we needed.
We can take a look at it when we get back and see
Yeah.
why that changed, and it may not have been intentional.
Chain, rope. Get out of my head.
Sorry, what?
The verticality of the terrain is very rolling, sloping, and there's currently no real erosion sort of cliff.
Undercut, yeah.
Yeah, or even coastal erosion from dynamic water hitting. Is there any opportunity for that? I know technically it's probably erosion.
Yeah, I mean, the voxel system certainly supports, as you guys have all built, things with overhangs on the procedural system currently does not. The reason for that is mainly a performance one. Every time you move through the world, it's generating all of that terrain on your computer. And so depending on your computer speed, how fast you're running, you may get kind of counted the gears in the past, it was really bad, but it's gotten a lot better. Basically, putting in the ability to do overhangs, things like that, just takes a lot more CPU processing power. So that's kind of a compromise that we've made right now. If we do a lot of more optimization, maybe we'll consider putting it back.
Can you just do that, Steve?
If we all just go by 8 core machines. Never mind.
And my question is around the quick travel. Thank you for the upcoming ley line network. Will that extend in all 3 cardinal directions so we can ley line down as well? Or is there more of a thought that we can craft something once we've been down to those layers to help us quick travel down further into the layers?
So those go underground as well. So they're surface and underground.
And you'll only be able to go to them if you've been to them before, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to answer these last 2 questions, and then we're going to be done. So just in case you come up with one, we'll have that answer after the panel.
Hello. I had a question about the shape of your islands. I noticed with the Dark Elf Museum Island, it was more naturally shaped, and it had more interesting graphical features like ocean running through the island and running through separate islands. Right now, your coastlines of each island, they're interesting to navigate through, but overall, they're very square. We'll get more natural shapes to each individual island.
I mean, part of that was because of the fact that we added the oceans in after we put some of the islands out there. So that's part of that. But when we do new islands, we have the opportunity to incorporate the oceans into them much more naturally. And so that's what you're seeing with the Dark Elf Foundation, because we were created after oceans, we took them into account. Steve, you want to add anything?
Well, I mean, it's really up to the artists right now. There is some tech that's coming, phase 3 of water, dealing with rivers and lakes, where we actually will use use algorithms to have the rivers and lakes carve paths through the island and then feed back into the height maps that we use, which could potentially improve that system. But basically, it boils down to that our playable area is 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer square. So we didn't want to be cutting off playable landmass too much. Though, you know, some of the islands have more natural shapes than others. So we definitely do that.
And the last question to this panel.
Props. Will be changed. So stretch.
That's not just a simple prop. It requires.
Yeah, well, you can put it from one point and stretch it to another. So.
That would be speed prop. But we use modular expressions of rope that change.
You could certainly tweak it into a long string. It's just an expression.
It wouldn't come this way.
But definitely great ideas, and we're always looking for really, you know, those kinds of things that will add a lot to the things we can do. So thanks for bringing everybody that brought suggestions out today. Thank you. Colette has a schedule, something to talk about the schedule.
A couple people have asked, so the remaining landmark-specific panels that we have today, the next one, the combat landmark panel, is at 2 p.m. So there's a little break right now if you want to sprint and get food and come back. That'll be at 2 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock is the landmark wiki on Gamepedia, the curse panel. So those are the two landmark-specific panels we have for the rest of the day.
And then don't forget the landmark Q&A that will be tomorrow at 12 o'clock, which will be, and we had it moved so